We talked about correlation and causation, right? Which is a common failing. If there's a top 3 sort of pitfall or wish people were aware of before they went down this measurement rabbit hole, what would be your top 3?
You're the only champagne I know the name of, other than the ones I've heard in rap songs.
They've actually trademarked the orange.
Woo! Oh, cheers. Yeah. The number 1 is just because someone clicked on an ad doesn't mean it was the ad that drove the sale. And the inverse of that was like, just because someone didn't click on an ad didn't mean it wasn't the ad that drove the sale, right? So I'd never heard this brand, it was Allbirds. I just saw an ad and it was like, I was like, oh, these look pretty cool. But like, I didn't like click on it. It was on Instagram. I just searched for Allbirds and I purchased some Allbirds. And I stopped and thought, being an attribution guy, I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I guess like Facebook would have gotten the credit there. If you showed an ad to everybody in the UK, in theory, 100% of your sales would be attributed to Facebook and Instagram. Do we really believe that like 100% of the people who bought Allbirds that day was because they saw the ad? No, there were loads of people that were going to buy it anyway. So I think like it's easy to like look at like, oh, this many people clicked on the ad and therefore this many people bought it. But like, that's wrong in 2 different ways at least. At Ladder, we were pretty unusual for an agency. Like we got 60% of our leads came directly from content. When we talked to them, the leads, on the initial sales calls, 90% of them in the HubSpot notes mentioned content. So like that was a huge driver for us. And it wasn't necessarily like they read the first blog post on our blog and then signed up straight away. They're all like, yeah, we've been reading a blog for a month, for 3 months, years, right? Like, and attribution is it's a tough one, right? Like, for that reason, and that's brand, right? Like that's brand advertising in a way. Yeah, sorry, that was number 2. So the ghost audience, right? Like just like that. Sometimes sales take a really long time, and you just, especially in B2B, I think like you just don't know when they're going to come around again. There is an impact that you're just not measuring. Third one, the point of advertising is to actually drive word of mouth. And that really screws up attribution, right? So like, I'll give you an example. Most of I mentioned like 60% of the leads at Ladder came through our content directly. Like we could measure in HubSpot and say like they read a blog post before they signed up. But when we looked at it and when we talked to these people, they were like, I don't know, like VPs of growth at companies or like VPs of marketing at bigger companies. And they weren't reading our blog a lot, actually. And when we talked to them, they're like, oh yeah, I needed a PPC agency. So I asked my smart friends who do PPC, like, could you help us? And they said, we're all too busy. But like, if I was going to hire someone, I would hire Ladder because their blog is what taught me how to do it. Right. So I mean, yeah, imagine measuring that. But like, I think that's a common misconception people get with brand advertising as well. Like, part of the point of brand advertising is to like, so not so that you convince the person watching the ad, but like so that you convince them that everyone else is buying the product as well, right? Being seen by everyone, generating that word of mouth, like generating that perception that you are like everywhere, is actually how the advertising works. Because if you convince someone that like that brand is everywhere, then it's a much lower risk to buy it. Even if it's a B2B purchase, we don't want to like lose our jobs by buying someone random, right? Like we want to just buy like the market leader and move on. So my pro tip, like maybe this is a good thing to end on, but like my pro tip is for attribution, like make the decision maker like really feel it in their bones. So like my favorite attribution story was at Travel.